Hi friends, welcome back to Scale Model Kit Review Studio, and welcome back to another episode of the Agora models of British SAS Jeep. Let's get started. Welcome my friends, welcome back to Scale Model Kit Review Studio. Welcome back to another installment of the Agora models, the British SAS Willy's Jeep. I am currently working on pack 4. Wow, we've done a lot so far with this. It's been fantastic. You can see here, we got this much done here with the chassis. We have the front axle and differential completed, along with the drive shaft and steering components, and the differential, drive shaft, and all that I already mentioned at once. So we're going to be working more parts, adding more to this chassis, and 8 more stages here, 25 through 30. And we'll talk about what we receive in each one of those. I'm sorry, 23, stage 23 through 30. So stage 23 is fitting the rear brake plates, and that's this right here. Stage 24, this would be the building the rear differential. So right here I'll show you what we do with that to beef it up. And then stage 25, building the front right wheel. And speaking of which, I showed you in pack 3 how to beef up the front axle, because that's the weakest point of this kit, are those axles, unfortunately. Stage 26 is fitting the front right wheel. Right, that's with 25. They have the rim, the wheel and tire, those go together. I'll combine those in the video. Stage 27, fitting the front brake hoses. So we'll actually have to cut those and route those. We also get a jerry can that makes that nice. Stage 28, fitting the rear brake hoses. Once again, we get more brake hoses and another jerry can. Some of the jerry cans were used for fuel and some were used for water. Stage 29, fitting the exhaust pipe, and we get a backpack there, some of the components that get mounted to the Jeep. And then stage 30, we received our first fender, the front left wheel fender, and that's there. You can see they still retain the green color out of the factory, but yet these were painted that desert yellow for the British. Very cool. All right, so without further ado, let's get started on stage 23. And welcome back. And also, don't forget to head over to the Agora Models website, and you can actually view the instructions for this online. You can download them or you can print them. You have those 3 options there for these. So they do not give us a little booklet or anything for the instructions. You must do that in order for you to build this. Okay. So we have parts here for stage 23. Okay, which is the fitting the rear brakes. We get a backpack there. Let's get a closer look at these parts. All right, here's a close-up of those parts. We have this backpack with a nice nylon strap attached to it with a painted buckle. That's very cool. And you may, if you can get some paint to match, you might want to fill in these edges and repaint it, which I might do. And then we have the rear brake drums. They mount to the axle along with the plastic U-bolts here. Okay. Alright, so we're going to install these U-bolts, and they are made of plastic and they are fragile. And you find that they're a little bit hard to put through the holes here on the plates for the bottom of the spring plate, spring perch. I left them loose so you have movement for both of the U-bolts on each side. Okay. Now, to make it easier, you don't want to use oil on plastic parts. So I'm going to use soap and water, dishwashing soap and some water. Simply take and dip it in there. Okay. The other thing you can do too is add some to the holes where it goes into. Put some soap and water there too. Okay. Now, this will dry up within 24 hours. And then you can go in there later and super glue the ends in place so they don't come loose. Alright. There we go. And see, it just went right in. Now at this point you could take and super glue it. Just wipe off the excess. Throw some super glue on these so they'll stay. If you wanted to throw some accelerator on there, that would help out also. But there you go. Both U-joints are in place. I'll do the other side and I'll be right back. And both sides are completed. All 4 U-bolts are installed. And you don't necessarily need to use the soap and water to help it along. You go ahead and try it out with them dry to see how they fit. Using some of the tweezers I showed you really helps out. And then I went ahead and I took and dried off everything, and then I applied some super glue to them to help hold them in place. And that's the super glue right there. Now I'll go ahead and install the brake backing plates. Next I'll be putting on these brake backing plates, and they're not marked left or right, but they are specific on how you install them. You want to make sure that the hole here on the backing plate is towards the top. Okay, going on the top of the chassis. And then of course there's a flat side. So the flat side, you want that facing towards the wheel and tire. Okay, so we'll bring over the chassis here, and I'm going to flip it over, and you can see this is the top of the chassis. This is the springs. So we want to make sure that our hole is on top, just like that, for both sides. So they're just going to insert in. They press fit in place. So that's all I do for stage 23. Let's get started on stage 24. Up next is stage 24. Here's the parts for that. These are the parts for building the rear differential. Let's get a closer view. Here's a close-up of those parts. We have FM screws. We have the drain and service plugs for the differential case, and that's these right here. They are made of metal. And we also have the drive shaft running to the transmission and to the differential, the rear differential. And then we have the rear differential cover. That's made of plastic. First thing we do is we install the service plug for the differential cover, and that's going to be the smaller plug. You can see we have a small one and a large one. So the smaller plug will go on this. Now to kind of help it along, I'm going to go ahead and remount the hole, make the hole just a little bit larger with my X-Acto blade to help it along. And if it's too loose, I can just glue it with some regular Tamiya extra thin. Alright. So I don't lose it, I'm going to leave it on the tree and press fit it in place. Just like that. Okay, I'll go ahead and put some extra thin on the back side. There's the extra thin, and just glue it from the back. And that will work on this plastic, not a problem. That's that right there. Then I can take my sprue cutters and cut it off. That way you don't lose it. There we go. Next step, we're going to install the drain plug for the differential. Now, that's the larger plug. It's just going to press fit in place. Smash it down. Doesn't even need glue, but you can use your tweezers if you want. There we go. And I left it on the tree so it doesn't pop out and I lose it. Now I can go ahead and cut it off the tree with some plastic snips. There we go. So that's what that looks. Now the fun part. All right, I want to explain some stuff to you guys with this. Next, I'm going to go ahead and install these differential case halves. And this is the top of the differential right here. And this is the bottom with the drain plug on it. Okay, so like I told you in pack 3 when I built the front axle, the weakest point on this axle are these holes here. It's very thin on each side, and what I found out with my Willys MB Jeep build, if you put any excessive weight on that area, it will snap. Even with everything screwed together, they will break and your axle will droop, will fall, and you'll like, hey, what's going on? So the way I fixed that is I super glued it. So the way that what we can do to prevent this from happening is we're going to install the axle just like it shows right here, or the differential case on there. But I'm going to super glue it in this area, and this is without putting any glue in those points there, because we have those points that need to go get sandwiched down. But I'll glue around them. So I'm going to put glue on this, and then glue around both of those points there. Okay, so let's do that. FM screws will hold all this together. Once again, I'm going to use my gel super glue, and I'm going to gel it here. Okay. On both sides, and you can kind of see that. All right. Now I'm going to put it in place and hold it in place. Okay, and I'm going to put. Alright, so before I close up the differential, I do want to put my cover on the back. Okay, and sandwich that in. There we go. Just like that. And get everything to line up here. There we go. So that's how that looks, and then I'll put more super glue on this. So I'm doing top and bottom. Alright, everything's reinforced here again. Now I'll put my screws back in, and so don't forget the differential cover and the drive shaft. Alright, so I can't use my larger screwdriver to actually tighten them down all the way because it doesn't fit in the holes very well to give you that extra torque. But there we go. Differential is completed. And it looks good. Alright. And that completes stage 24. Let's get started on stage 25. And welcome back. Now we'll go ahead and combine two more stages because it just makes sense here. We're going to assemble the wheel and tire. So the wheel is two halves, stage 25, and stage 26 is the tire. So let's go ahead and get a closer look at both of these. Stage 25 is the wheel. We received both halves of that, made of metal. Very nice there. Received the brake drum itself, the center cap, and a spacer, CM screws. Stage 26 is the front right wheel. And this very hard plastic and binoculars. Very cool. And BM screws. Now I'm going to go ahead and take and heat up this tire in boiling water for about 3 minutes. Bring it back up here in my studio and install the rim on the tire. I'll be right back. Alright, first thing we do here is we'll go ahead and install the drum onto the wheel just like that, and 2 CM screws will go into that. And both screws have been installed. I used a little bit of 3-in-1 oil to help it along. Okay, I am back. Take it out of foil here. So it's a lot more pliable now. You can see that. So we'll insert the wheel on top here, and then we'll put the other side on, line up the holes, and it's right there. Easy to get your screws in. The rubber is really soft and pliable. It's warm, so I'm keeping my fingers on the wheel itself instead of the tire. And we'll put 4 screws into this. The BM screws, they're black. And there you go. All 4 screws are tightened down, and that's what that looks like there. Looks great. You can see the rubber is still very pliable, very nice. And last thing you should do is take your little spacer, insert that into the hub there, and put your cap down on top to lock it in. And we'll install that a little bit later, but that completes stage 26 and 25. Let's get started on stage 27. Here's the parts for stage 27. We have some front brake hoses and a jerry can. Let's get a closer look. Alright, here's a close-up of those parts. We got CP, DM, and DP screws. We did receive the brake hoses. The jerry can halves themselves, which are made of plastic. The top, the cap, and the little plugs. And the parts for the brakes. So we received a brake cylinder and some attachment points for the brake hoses. Alright, we need 2 hoses that are 10 centimeters. That's that right there. That's those 2 10-centimeter hose. We need 1 hose that's 5 centimeters. That's that there. And 1 hose that's 18 centimeters. There you go. We have some left over. So next we're going to assemble this brake valve and brake valve frame assembly. And we have these connectors here for the brake lines. So the shorter one is going to mount up against the bracket, just like that, on the brake valve. Be using a couple of CP screws for this. So you just got to pay attention to the instructions here. Do you see how everything goes together? Just like that. Just like that. The two 10-centimeter hoses are called the 27E1 hoses. The 27E2 hose is the 5-centimeter, and the 27E3 hose is the 18-centimeter. Next, we're going to press fit the hose to the brake valve. And they say if you need to make the end of the hose wider, you can use a toothpick, or you can actually use these tweezers here that I have to make it just a little wider, like that, and then press fit it in place. And you may want to use some super glue also for this. There you go. Which I would recommend the super glue. Okay, I'm back. So I picked up this gap filling super glue. It's called Super T from Satellite City, and I had it stored in my refrigerator, and I haven't even opened it yet. Like that. And I'll put this back in the fridge, but dip the hose inside the super glue and then press fit it in place, and that should hold it in place. We'll let that sit for a few minutes. Next, the longer 18-centimeter hose, 27E3, goes on the side here. There's another connector. I'll stretch it out a little bit. A bit of super glue and press that in place there. There you go. Now, next thing we do is we install this brake valve onto the chassis, and you can see there's two mounting holes for it there. If I flip this over, you'll note that there are cutouts for the brake line to run from. So the brake line is going to go in there, run down that channel, and come out the other end. All right. And you can see how that looks there. And then if I flip it over, you can see where the brake line runs through that opening down the channel here, and it's going to come out the other end right there. But I went ahead and super glued it first, so that's what that looks like there, and then we'll run our hoses from there, from the axle. Okay, so I'm going to glue that down on the axle next. Alright, here's a close-up view. So I've got it glued down on top of the axle. We have the shorter hose, the 5-centimeter hose running off to the left, and then the 10-centimeter hose running off to the right. And these will plug into the brake drums on each side. Next, we'll plug the left brake line into the drum, and you can see there's a hole for that. And it should just press fit in place. And should snap right in, just like that. and the other side snapped right in. No glue is required for that. Looks good. And of course, all our hoses are hooked up. Now we'll go ahead and assemble the jerry can next. Alright, to assemble the jerry can, we're just going to put the two halves together here. Put that together with 2 DP screws. And the next one here. And remember, we're going into plastic here, so you don't want to over tighten them to where you strip them out. So that should be good. And we have little 2 plastic plugs that go in, just like that. And like that. That's what those plugs look like. Then we put in our cap. That press fits also, just like that. And our handle press fits all together, snaps together. Here we go. And there's our jerry can. And that completes stage 27. We completed the front brake lines and the jerry can. Let's head over and get started on stage 28, which is the rear brake lines. Stage 28 is the rear brake hoses. Here's the parts. We also received another jerry can. Let's get a closer look. Here's a close-up of those parts. Here's our jerry can, made of plastic, 2 halves. The handle's made of plastic, the cap, and the plugs. Here's our rear brake lines and connectors, DP screws. We have 2 connectors here. We have a 28B and a 28C. So the 28C is this one right here, and 28B has that square, so that's 28B. So we have to pay attention to that when we're installing our brake hoses. Okay, so now we have 3 hoses. I cut 2 of them at 7 centimeters each, and then 1 at 5 centimeters. Okay, so the 2 hoses that are 7 centimeters are called 28D1, and then the shorter 5 centimeter is 28D2. Okay, so I grabbed the 5 centimeter, the 28D2 hose, and the 28C, which is the connector that's not square. Okay, and we're going to put our hose on it. Put a little super glue on the end of the hose and press fit it down, just like that. Now the other side here gets attached to that hose on our chassis. We need to put our connector on this hose here on the chassis, but we need to route it through this hole on the side here, just like that. Turn it over, you can see where it came through. Now it's actually ultimately going to go down on that spot with that hole with the connector. So now we're going to take our connector and we're going to route that on there. I'm going to take some super glue and put that all together there, and then that's going to go down on top of that. I'm going to let that hose dry a little bit and then I'll hook that up. Alright, so now the hose is hooked up down here. And if you wanted to super glue it, you could. I did not. But you can see where that ran from. So next I took and I mounted that hose from the chassis to this connector here, the square one, and we're going to install our 2 lines onto that. Now they are the same length, so they should reach, because that connector there is centered. So we'll glue that one in place, and we'll glue the other one in place. And then while I'm at it, I'm going to glue the ends in place. Got this connector goes like that. And the last one here gets glued on that. So here's the 2 connectors that go to the brake drums each side. So we'll mount our hose connector on top of the differential there, just like that, and then I'll route my brake hoses to the drums. Okay, so next I'm going to snap that brake line onto the brake drum here. And I'm just making the hole a little bit larger because I am going to super glue it. Just like that. Snap that in place. Just like that. Do the same on the other side. Remember, we're going plastic to plastic here, so a little bit of extra thin will hold that down. And here's your brake line hooked up to the drum on both sides. Now let's go ahead and assemble the other jerry can. And here's our jerry can parts. I'm going to go ahead and assemble this off camera. I showed you how I did that in the previous stage, stage 27. So I'll be right back. I didn't show this with the previous jerry can, but these caps, there's a flat side and there's a beveled side. You see that? So you definitely want to have the flat side outward before you press it in place. And there's the jerry can completed. And remember, with these jerry cans, they were used both for gasoline or water. So what distinguished the gasoline cans from the water cans? Can you tell me in the comments below? That completes stage 28, where we completed the rear brake lines and this jerry can. So let's head over and get started on stage 29. Here's the parts for stage 29. This is the exhaust system. We also received another backpack. Let's get a closer look. CP and DM screws, and our muffler gets mounted underneath with the exhaust pipes and such, along with another backpack. Has a nylon strap and buckle, metal buckle. Very nice. Alright, the first thing we're going to do is install this muffler and tailpipe hose. So this one right here has an alignment hole with a pin, so we'll just line that up with that pin. Press it down, and that's what it looks like from the side, and we'll put a CP screw into that. So the next one goes on just like that. Once again, another CP screw will hold that down. And there we go. Kind of see how all that looks there. Alright, so the exhaust system is going to mount in two places on the frame here. We have one on the side, and that's going to be the smaller CP screw for that. And then to turn it over, we have a DM screw that's going to go in right there. So this is going to basically go down like that. Okay. So we'll put the DM in first, and we'll leave it loose. Alright, so put the DM screw in on first here. Used a little bit of 3-in-1 oil for that. And I'm going to leave it a little bit loose so we can line up the other side here, turn it over. And our CP screw is going to go in over there. Now, no oil required for that because it's going into plastic. Okay, so line it up here. Use a CP screw. Once again, no oil. Right there. Don't over tighten it so you don't strip it. You can see how that looks. And then we'll tighten the other one over here. And be careful you don't over tighten this because you could break the plastic mounting bracket. So there we go. And that's good there. And that completes stage 29. We installed the exhaust system here. This is a little bit fragile, so when you're going to pick up the Jeep while you're building it, be careful you don't put too much pressure on that because you could break things on that. So let's go ahead and build the final stage for this video, stage 30. Here's stage 30, which are the final stage for this video. Here's a close-up of what they look like when you get them. Let's get a closer look. Alright, here's a close-up of those parts. DM, FM, and OM screws. Here's our fender itself. Made of metal, of course. Got the sand yellow, but we also have the olive drab green for the engine compartment area. Very cool. Very nice detail there. We have a bracket for the fender, which is made of metal, and another bracket for that. Alright, so we're going to be installing the left fender on the frame, and you'll see there's a couple of tabs here that line up with a couple of holes on the frame, and it basically just press fits in place, both front and back. We're going to put in two FM screws, one in the back and one in the front. So this is a larger screw, FM, and I'm using my larger WWII PH1 screwdriver for that. I put some 3-in-1 oil on the screw. I'm going to leave it a little bit loose to install the other bracket. And you want to support the frame while you press down to put that screw in, so you don't, cause any damage to any of the components there. Okay, so that's what that looks like there. It's a little bit loose still, and I'll tighten them down a little bit later, but that's what that looks like. Now we're going to install this bracket that goes on the side here. Okay, and that's this bracket here. So there is an alignment hole. There's two on the bottom and one on top. So we put screws in on the bottom, and we make sure we align this tab here on top of the bracket there with that hole on the fender. You can just see that. Okay, so we'll do that. Get that to fall in place. And we're going to be putting in two screws here, DM screws. And there we go. So they're all started. I can go ahead and crank them down a little bit. Don't over tighten them, just until they're snug. Alright. Next we have this little bracket here, and it's going to mount on the fender. Okay, so I need to look closer at the instructions and make sure I have it on right. Okay, so I'll give you a close-up here of that bracket. If you look on the other side, you can see how that it looks and how it's shaped, but there's some ejector pin marks. You don't want those showing. You want to turn it over, and you want to have the thinner part on top, just like that. So 4 DM screws will go into that. I'll go ahead and do that, and I'll be right back. Okay, all the screws are in. I tightened them down, but not real tight because you want to split the plastic on that part there. I put just a tiny bit of oil on those screws. Now this is the single Vickers machine gun that mounts to this, so that's what that's for. Now we're going to go ahead and install the wheel and tire. Alright, next we're going to install this wheel and tire on the left side here. We have our cap, we have our spacer, we have our OM screw. It's a very large OM screw, and that's going to go over the top just like that. We'll put our spacer in next, and then we'll put our screw in. What I like to do is I like to get my threads started first before I do any of that. So I'm going to go ahead and take my screw, dip it in some oil, and I'm going to get the thread started. I'm going to run it in and run it back out, and then we'll install everything. Okay, so I have my thread started now. I'll go ahead and put my wheel on and the spacer, and I'll put the screw in now. And that's good there. Not too tight. You don't want to over tighten it. That's good. Then we'll put our cap on. There we go. One wheel and tire installed on this already. So that completes stage 30. I'll be right back. And there you have it. That completes pack 4 of the Agora models build the British SAS Willys Jeep. A lot of fun here. I'm having a blast. If you think you'd like to get this for yourself, head over to agoramodels.com and subscribe to this build today. Get it while it's still available. So if you have any questions, please put comments down below and I'll answer those questions for you. And also, as a note here, I did film this on a live IRL video, so if you want to see the live video for this, go to my main channel and click on the live tab above and you'll see all my live videos there. This is part of a build series for this Jeep. So if you like my content, please subscribe to my channel and smash that like button until pack 5 arrives, and I'll be building that very shortly. Take care and happy modeling.